The term Men of Iron is a catch-all term for all AIs created during the dark age of technology. But what forms did they take, and what roles were they made for? If we look at them on a larger galactic scale, when they could snuff out suns and strip the flesh of billions on a planet in seconds, we will look at those possible roles and how they used those abilities when they turned on humanity during the Cybernetic Revolt. We will go to the excerpt and then speculate and break it down for you afterwards. From Perpetual by Dan Abnett. The city was a deep, meandering place of dark stone. The locals called it Andrioch. It was a human colony from the days of the first stellar exodus, and all fancied that it had been magnificent once. But there had been some sort of misadventure, probably due to the technology wars that marred this bleak era of humanity. The dark stone of the city was dark because it was stained, perhaps with soot or by radiation burns. The cliff that the city overhung plunged away into the centre of the world. If you peered down, you could see, through the clouds of vapour, the glow of the magmatic surface that was the planet's core, far below. He thought Andrioch had likely been twice this size, once. Half of it looked to have been torn away by whatever created the cliff. There were weapons in the older days that could do it, weapons of immeasurable power, tech devices employed by both Iron Men and the alliances that stood against their cybernetic revolt. All remembered the horror of entropic engines that ignited planets, sun snuffers that uncoiled like serpents the size of Saturn's rings, Mechars ingesting data along with the cities that contained them and hurling continents into the heavens. Omni-phage swarms, stripping flesh from a billion bones in the blink of an eye. Those were the good old days, when war was something too colossal for a human mind to comprehend. Although he did not say so, all person believed that a Mechar had bitten Andrioch in two, a rogue unit perhaps, though by that latter stage of the revolt, almost all machines were rogue, their AI querulously hunting for friends, but perceiving everything as enemies. The citizens of Andrioch were pale ghosts, like things that had lived in a cave, lacking colour or health, or effective eyesight. Their skin was translucent. They did not interact with all in his band, but spent their days and nights in the rotting pits of their dwellings, wired into constant data feeds, sutured into their eyes and scalps, feeding off some illusion of normal life, while they waited for the mechanicalism to end. For them, it never would. Their bodies would wither and die, and they would come to exist only as a virtual spectre, the memory of a city stored in a digital gestalt. Now to try and add some deeper analysis, let's break down each of the Men of Iron body types mentioned. Most intriguing to me are the Mechars, ingesting data along with the cities that contained them, and hurling continents into the heavens. We see in the text it's eaten half of Andrioch, and that the bite goes down to the planet's core, and we are told they eat not just the city, but its data. This could be information stored on cogitators, as they're called in M40, but also we know they eat the warp, the data that makes up the materium and the immaterium. All who in this short story has been cutting through space and time with a knife become stuck along with this party due to the Man of Iron, the Mechar. Now think on it. As a weapon, they can eat the warp and prevent certain routes. Perhaps they don't do this everywhere as they need the warp to travel themselves, but for the humans this could really allow the Men of Iron to lock humans into certain areas by blocking the warp routes, eating the data there and stopping them moving around in it. This could have directed enemy forces to take certain paths or isolating strategically important worlds perhaps, holding resources humanity would need, assuming of course the Men of Iron have such strategic goals. The Tabula Myriad calculates the odds in battle and tells you the best outcome. So we have one example of this. And why to the core? Interestingly, all hive cities have connections down to the core on the planet for energy. So perhaps it's related to that. Next are entropic engines that ignited planets. Entropic means without order or form, and engines in 40k mean machines, say such as a Titan. Ignited could mean set them on fire, or do something with their cores to cause an explosion, destroy the planet from within. Perhaps these were once the opposite, and ignited dying stars, giving them longer lives, and entropic or chaotic form brings to my mind a nanite-style swarm, moving and shifting like a flock of birds in flight. And the opposite, sun snuffers, that uncoiled like serpents the size of Saturn's rings. Clues in the name. They end life on nearby planets by putting out its sun like cutting off oxygen from a candle. Without its light, even planets at a distance, once brought to life by its rays, would fade. Think on this basic factor. With no sunlight, plants would not be able to grow and would die, and with no plants, you'd get no oxygen for those on Terra to breathe. And you get the picture. Unlike what you'd probably expect from a sci-fi movie, the sun itself would not explode, but remain as a dwarf, a heated object with no power source, and it would cool down for billions of years with no explosion or mass change. A great way for the Imperium to distantly and remotely remove an enemy pre-revolt. How they do this, we don't know. A quick Google tells me that a sun stays lit using nuclear fusion. Near its core, the hydrogen atoms are forced together into a new form, helium, thus releasing energy that manifests as light and heat that creates the burn that lets a sun glow. Maybe the snuffer unbalances or ends this process, going into the core and stopping that conversion process. And lastly, Omni-phage swarms, stripping flesh from a billion bones in the blink of an eye. Omni means of all things, and phage is a virus, so swarms of nanites maybe that use whatever infection means they have, perhaps every disease or virus mankind has ever cured or dreamt up, all passed on to the unlucky victims, leaving nothing but bones before they can even recognise what's happened to them. And if any of my Google level science is off regarding the sun, I'd be interested to know. And so we reach the end of our speculation, and I turn things over to you. What do you think to these forms mentioned from the Men of Iron? What would they have done in those forms? Did they ever work for the Imperium, or were they just combat forms during the revolt? For nano forms such as the Blood Tide, do you think the Men of Iron took after us, an AI? They would not have the need to have a fixed form. And let me know in the comments what you think. And if you like this video on the Men of Iron, why not try this one?